Matthew 27, verse 1 to 2. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. The opening verses of Matthew 27 bring the narrative to the decisive turning point of the gospel record. The long conflict between Jesus and the leadership of Israel now reaches its climax. The one who had walked among them as the promised king, teaching in their synagogues and declaring the arrival of the kingdom of heaven, is formally handed over to the authority of Rome. In these two verses, the religious leaders of Israel move from opposition to final determination. The Messiah must be put to death. Matthew tells us that when the morning was come, the chief priests and elders gathered together. The night before had already seen the trial before the high priest, where false witnesses were brought and accusations were made. Yet the leaders reconvened at daybreak in order to formalize their decision. According to their customs and legal structures, an official judgment required such confirmation. What had already been decided in the darkness of night is now ratified in the light of morning. The text states that they took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. The phrase reveals that the verdict had already been settled in their hearts. This was not a search for truth, but a conspiracy to secure a particular outcome. Throughout the gospel narrative, Jesus had exposed the corruption of the religious system and had proclaimed the fulfillment of what the law and the prophets anticipated. The leadership, rather than receiving the one to whom their scriptures pointed, determined to eliminate him. Yet within the unfolding story of Scripture, their actions were not outside the sovereign design of God. The Messiah had repeatedly foretold that he would be delivered into the hands of men, condemned and crucified. What appeared to be the triumph of opposition was in reality the very means through which redemption would be accomplished. Matthew emphasizes that they bound him. The one through whom all things were created is treated as a criminal. The king is restrained by the authority of those who reject him. The imagery carries deep irony. The one who came to bring liberation is himself bound by human hands. The leaders believed they were securing their power and protecting their position. But in binding Jesus, they were moving the divine plan toward its fulfillment. After binding him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Under Roman rule, the Jewish leadership did not have authority to carry out capital punishment. Their judgment, therefore, required the approval of the Roman governor. The Messiah of Israel is thus transferred from the court of the religious authorities to the tribunal of the Gentile ruler. This transition highlights an important theme in Matthew's gospel. The rejection of Jesus by the leadership of Israel leads to his presentation before the nations. Pilate represents the imperial authority of Rome, the ruling power over Judea at that time. The king of the Jews now stands before the representative of the Gentile world. The language "delivered him" echoes repeatedly throughout the Passion narrative. Judas delivered him to the priests. The priests deliver him to Pilate. Pilate will deliver him to be crucified. Human agents pass him along as though he were merely a prisoner subject to their will. Yet behind every human action stands the deeper reality that the Messiah was giving himself over according to the purpose established before these events unfolded. Throughout the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus had proclaimed that his mission involved suffering and death in Jerusalem. The Son of Man would be delivered, condemned, and crucified. And through that death, the covenant story of Israel would reach its climactic fulfillment. The system centered in the temple, the sacrifices, and the priesthood was approaching its appointed conclusion. The death of the Messiah would bring about the reality toward which those shadows had pointed. Thus, the council of the priests and elders, their decision to bind him, and their delivery of him to Pilate form part of the larger movement of redemptive history. The rejection by the leaders of the Old Covenant order becomes the doorway through which the decisive act of salvation unfolds. The one condemned by men would soon accomplish what the law and the prophets anticipated, but could never themselves complete. In these two verses, the narrative quietly advances toward the cross. The machinery of religious authority and imperial power begins to move against Jesus. Yet, what appears to be the control of human institutions is ultimately the unfolding of God's predetermined purpose. The Messiah stands bound and delivered, moving step by step toward the sacrifice through which the work of redemption would be finished.